the trunk monkey, the revolutionary idea you'll only find one place.
Hi everyone, Ken here Gaming, and welcome back to another unit review. Today we'll be looking at Yukimura, who is an uber rare you can get from rolling the Sengoku Wargods banner, as well as Uberfest, Epicfest, Superfest, and all those banners that just give you any sort of common fest uber. Before this video starts, I'd like to ask if you could please like and subscribe if you haven't already, since these unit reviews take a lot of time and effort to make, and I'd really appreciate it. And before every unit review I make, I actually do a community post asking what unit you want, so if you'd like to choose the next unit, keep an eye on the community post, and it will show up in your feed if you're subscribed. Back to Yukimura though. Yukimura is a rusher whose only ability is massive damage versus black, and it also is notable that he possesses a full backswing mechanic, which means that after he attacks he'll stay completely still and then instantly attack again if an enemy knocks him back. This is the same mechanic Awakened Bahamut has, so if you ever noticed how Bahamut will attack after he gets knocked back, it's the same thing Yukimura will do. And at level 30, Yukimura has the stats shown. So, as you can see, Yukimura is extremely fast, with pretty high damage and DPS, with low cost, cooldown, and range. So due to this super fast speed and pretty good damage, this makes him a perfect unit for rushing enemies with higher range like Kamel, or slipping into enemies with long distances blind spots like Taki. Now, with all of these attributes, this guy might be reminding you of someone, and that's because he's basically an uber rare counterpart of Awakened Bahamut Cat. Now, being an uber doesn't mean he's automatically better than Awakened Bahamut, so let's compare the two a little bit. Pulling up both of their stats side by side, you can see that Yukimura has almost half of Bahamut's cooldown and only costs 2/3 as much as Bahamut. Yukimura is also faster and has slightly more health than Bahamut. Bahamut, however, has over double Yukimura's damage, triple Yukimura's DPS, and it also has one more knockback count and slightly higher range. So, from first glance, we kind of get the impression that Yukimura is like a light version of Bahamut, possessing less offensive power in exchange for better cost and refresh rate. Against black enemies, however, Yukimura's attack stat is quadrupled, giving him a whopping 168k damage and 37k DPS. These numbers are completely insane and even outdo Bahamut. So against black enemies, there's no doubt that Yukimura is better in every regard, but only against that one trait. So, on an equal playing field with both at level 30, both units have their own advantages and disadvantages, and which one you use kind of depends on the stage you're playing. So Bahamut has more power, but Yukimura is far more expendable. Honestly, in a lot of stages you can just bring both, since having two strong rusher type units is actually really overpowered sometimes. But personally, if I could only bring one, I would usually bring Bahamut, just because again, Yukimura has about half of Bahamut's attack stat level 30, so Bahamut just has more of an oomph factor, like he really deals big damage compared to Yukimura. If we're talking about an unequal playing field though, let's remember that Yukimura is an uber, while Bahamut is a special legend, and that means Yukimura can be boosted all the way to level 50 with Cat's Eyes, while Bahamut can only be boosted to level 40. Additionally, Yukimura already has talents, which increases his advantages over Bahamut even further. So Yukimura's talents are as follows. Strengthen Up, which activates at 40% health and increases Yukimura's damage by 50%. Resist Freeze and Resist Slow, which are both completely terrible and do not even get these, they're terrible, they just suck. And the last two are the typical attack and defense up buff. When at level 10, they increase his health and power by 20%. So out of all of these talents, the Strengthen talent is definitely the most interesting one. So as I said, at 40% health, Yukimura's damage output will increase by 50%. With Yukimura's 5 knockback counts, that means after he gets knocked back the 3rd time, that's when his rage will activate. So this talent's really good and I highly recommend it, and of course the stat up talents are always good, though the attack up is definitely more relevant because Yukimura's big damage is why you want to use him, not for his health factor. Although having more health does help him survive a bit and utilize all 5 knockback counts since he is a rusher, and he will definitely be taking a lot of hits before he dies, so health up isn't bad either, but I definitely recommend attack up way more. Comparing a maxed out Yukimura to a maxed out Bahamut, Yukimura is really starting to get closer to Bahamut stats. If we compare the level 50 hypermaxed Yukimura to the level 30 no talent Yukimura, his stats have almost doubled since then. And when he has his Strengthen effect up, his damage skyrockets to 120k. which is even higher than level 40 Bahamut's attack stat. And to add insult to injury, Yukimura has way better health than Bahamut, and still retains his better respawn rate and cost. Also looking at the DPS, keep in mind that even though Bahamut's DPS is higher, because they're both rusher units with really low range, it's less about their DPS and more about their raw attack stat, because what's going to happen with these rushers is, since they have full backswing, they're going to rush into the front line, get hit back as many times as their knockback count permits, then die. So usually DPS is less relevant. So even though Bahamut has better DPS, I feel like Yukimura would still do similar overall damage. Since Yukimura's health is so high now, he is better able to utilize all 5 of his knockback counts, while Bahamut will oftentimes die before he's able to utilize all 6 of his knockback counts due to his much lower HP compared to Hypermax Yukimura. Overall, Yukimura is a way better unit when Hypermax, but at level 30, they're both it's kind of iffy who's better, though I would lean more towards Bahamut at level 30. In that regard, Yukimura is kind of similar to Balrog, where he requires a lot of investment, but if you do put in the cat size and the NP, he really does become one of the best units in the game. I mean, it's a well-known fact that Awakened Bahamut is one of the best units in the game, but Yukimura can even exceed him. Alright, so this whole unit review kind of got hijacked by the Bahamut versus Yukimura comparison, but I think it was necessary to compare the two since they're so similar, and having just said that, Yukimura is better than Bahamut Max, but we're going to lean back towards or talk more about Yukimura at level 30, because I'm just going to sum up now. Yukimura Hypermax, one of the best Ubers and overall units in the game, and if I had to rank him on a tier list, I put him in S. So now onto the pros and cons, and these pros and cons will be for Yukimura, assuming he's level 30 with no talents. Non-max Yukimura has the pros of low cost, low cooldown, high speed, full backswing, short foreswing, decent damage stat, and he's extremely powerful in his niche. And all of these qualities are what makes him one of the best rushers in the game, but he is not without fault, however, as he has the weaknesses of very low range, pretty fragile health, similar to Bahamut's at level 30, as well as kind of a mediocre, middling 9.2k DPS. So the big thing about Yukimura at this level is his attack stat's pretty good, and it can shred smaller or more threatening peons like Gabriel and Doge Dark, but if you run into really beefy, big damage dealing attackers like the Sloth, Yukimura is kind of just going to run into the Sloth, get in a hit or two, and then just die instantly because his health at this level isn't really high enough to tank more than 1 or 2 of the Sloth's attacks, and his damage is not enough to budge to the Sloth, so he ends up just running into a wall and then dying. With this in mind, Yukimura is far more suited to enemies with rapid attacks, like Kamel, because he can't insta-kill Yukimura like the Sloth can, and with Kamel's rapid attacks, he'll keep knocking Yukimura back, so Yukimura's full backswing will activate, and he'll keep rushing forward and hitting Kamel, increasing Yukimura's DPS when this happens. Now on to ranking him. Again, these rankings will all be for a level 30 Yukimura, or it could also apply to level 40 Yukimura, but this is with no talents, not level 50. Maxed out Yukimura is just that good, but anyway, data rank, normal, basic, no talent Yukimura. In every single stage of the game, I would say Yukimura's usage remains pretty high, but oftentimes it's also in direct competition with Bahamut, and if you can only bring one of the two units, Bahamut's typically the first pick, but in a lot of stages, bringing both is a good idea, as I previously mentioned. In early game, I actually disliked Yukimura because I thought he was worse than Awakened Bahamut, which in some ways Yukimura is worse than Awakened Bahamut, but I used to think he was flat out worse due to Yukimura having a slightly longer time between attacks that makes Yukimura as a unit overall feel less powerful. I'm not saying he is way less powerful, but he just felt that way to me. In a lot of stages, I would say rushing with Bahamut's faster because Bahamut has way higher DPS than Yukimura and way higher damage. So in the type of stages that Bahamut can juggle, just bring Bahamut. And in the type of stages where having multiple rushes is good, bring both of them. And for any money tight stages you encounter, Yukimura only costs 30,075, so he's a much cheaper alternative to Bahamut if you're facing a money tight stage where you need a rusher unit. I recommend boosting this guy to at least level 40 and more if you can afford it, because he does get outclassed even more so by Bahamut once you beat Stories of Legends, and after you beat SOL, you can upgrade Awakened Bahamut to level 40, so that's when Bahamut will start shadowing a level 30 Yukimura more and more, but boosting Yukimura is pretty easy as long as you have the cat size and some XP, but that's why I gave Yukimura an A- in late game if you keep him at level 30 anyways. So yeah, A's across the board, but as a specialist, aka an anti-black unit, I had to give him an S+, because he is amazing against black enemies. So it's a well-known fact that most black enemies have really low range and really high DPS, and Yukimura's the same way, really low range and really high DPS. So what Yukimura does is he'll rush into the front line of a swarm of black enemies, instantly kill almost anything there, any Gories, Shadowboxer K's, Doge Darks. They usually get melted by Yukimura, and since Yukimura's attack stat is so high against black enemies, he can also rush into higher range enemies like Lenoir, Toucan, and many more, and of course he's excellent for getting into Taki's blind spot. He'll rush in, get a really good juicy hit in on Taki, and Taki will die in 1 or 2 hits to Yukimura most of the time. Honestly, his range would be his biggest downfall against most generalist enemies, but against black enemies, having low range is perfectly fine, and it's even beneficial against enemies like Taki. So yeah, he has excellent matchups against the trait of his choice, so I have to give him an S+ there. There's not really that many units who can contend with his anti-black prowess. He is the biggest, most racist Birdman. But the ranking's done. That wraps up this video. Again, if you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I work pretty hard on these videos. Voicing over takes way longer than you think. All these other dudes, they usually use text, but when you voice over, you have to type out the entire thing, make a script, then you have to voice it over, then you have to edit all the voiceovers. I usually leave the end unedited just because why not? It's just me concluding. But yeah, voicing over takes a while, so I'd really appreciate if you gave me a little bit of love. And again, next time I make a community post, I usually ask what unit you want, so if you want to pick, leave it there. And I do have a playlist full of all the unit reviews on my channel. Check that out if you want to watch some more of these and you're new. And of course, I have different types of videos too. I have a Minecraft playlist. One of my most recent videos was a Skywars video with my friend Luke. That's about it, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Bye-bye.